Welcome to the Expat Edge with Marcus and Matt, where we answer your questions about becoming an expat to help you thrive abroad. Hey everyone, welcome to the Expat Edge. In this episode, we're going to talk about why we became an expat. Matt, you and I have different stories of how we became an expat in Russia. Let's start with your story.
Sure. So I decided relatively quickly that I wanted to be an expat. I grew up in rural Maine and I had never really traveled much, but we did go to Quebec, Canada every winter. And for those of you who don't know, Quebec, Canada actually is quite different than anywhere else in the US and Canada. Much more, I would say, like Europe than it is like the surrounding areas. I traveled a little bit, and the university just did a travel abroad program for a few weeks every year. They were just going to Russia the year that I was able to go, and it was random actually that I went to Russia. And when I saw Russia, I just saw like the world is so big and so different in other places, and I want to see what it's like living in a place like that. And also I really enjoyed Russian people and the culture. And so I just decided, after I worked a year or two in Boston, I just quit my job and moved to Russia. And I said, I'll figure it out.
Okay, so that's quite different from, that topic didn't come into my mind like, oh, how do I become an expat? But I had experience traveling abroad as a teenager because my mother is from Germany. Right. And so I had traveled to several European countries with my cousins as well while I was in Germany. And so I had seen quite a bit, but Europe still seemed, the mentality as a teenager seemed similar.
Right.
To the US. So I kind of wanted to go somewhere completely different. And I had no idea what Russia was like. I didn't know anything about it. So I just chose to go to Russia. I was looking into Europe and I just chose to go to Russia. And it kind of grew on me over time. Like, it was very, very different. But I saw myself spending more and more time there. One, to perfect my Russian, but also two, even though it was very, very different, I kind of was intrigued by it. So like, why do they do it this way? And so I had a lot more questions while I was living in Russia. And that's why I, ended up being an expat in Russia. I just kind of, the different ways intrigued me of how things are done.
Well, I think that's the best part about being an expat, right? Is because no matter where you go, people are still people. They might do things very differently, but at the end of the day, everybody's worried about the same couple things. And it's so interesting to see the completely different approaches to solving those, few sort of requirements of life, whether that be what people eat or how they eat, or whether they go to church or not, whether that be how they study. I mean, everything is basically the same. You have all the same institutions, but everything is done differently. And just being open to see those different things is incredibly eye-opening. At least it was for me. And that's why I wanted to be an expat. And I think anybody who's been an expat, as long as sometimes people are in like real expat bubbles. I heard that in Saudi Arabia until relatively recently, you lived in a compound and you worked, right? So like you only interacted with super intelligent local Saudi people and other expats, and then you lived only around other expats. So, it's probably quite a bit different there. Of course, you can go out to restaurants and, see the local culture, but it's not like a country like Russia where you could integrate yourself completely into the local culture for the most part. But it's just opening your eyes to a completely different way of life, although people are still essentially doing the same things.
I was I went to Russia when I was 18, and that was one of the main things that I had taken back to the US when I returned. I was, very observant of things in Russia, how things were always being done differently. I was thinking to myself, why? And then, over time, I kind of just accepted, okay, it's different. I'm not going to ask. It's hard to explain until you really know the culture. And then I was like, well, people are the same in Russia as they are in the US. They go to work, there's teachers, doctors, same professions. They go to work, they want to spend time with their family and their hobbies, and they have the same, needs and wants. And so it was kind of interesting to go from like everything is, or a lot of things are done differently. People want the same things and they need the same things. And that's why I continue to enjoy being an expat and observing these things in different places too.
I have a question for you. One of the things that I always really liked about Russia in the very beginning was everything seemed so crazy and so different and so random at times. And I kind of stopped noticing that. Once you really understand the language and you understand everything that's going on around you, sometimes it kind of loses, I don't want to say some of the luster, right? But it became less interesting. Once I understood everything that was going around me, the words and why people were doing certain things, it stopped being unpredictable and crazy and just normal.
I never got to that point in Russia. I mean, I got more normal because obviously I could understand more and things, but there are still things that are done differently, and I'm just like, oh, this is so annoying. Why do they do it this way?
The only exception being things that are really annoying. Like, why would someone spit in the elevator? I mean, no one would ever think to do that in the US. I mean, I can't speak for other countries, right? But no one would ever do that, but it would drive me insane. Or smoking in the elevator. Everywhere's non-smoking in Russia, and somebody would smoke in the elevator.
Yeah, and I think you always focus on those things, then, probably being an expat is not for you because you already have your expectations of how things should be done. I
agree with you almost 100%. But it's only 1% of the people in Russia who do that too. Do you know what I mean? Like in the US, 0% of the people would smoke in a public elevator. In Russia, it's 1% of people, but it still happens. It's not only that bugged me, but that bugged everybody else. Do you know what I mean? Or the people who just let their dogs, poop on the sidewalk, right in the middle of the sidewalk, and don't clean it up, even though they have bags. It's like just these types of behaviors. I just started to notice, and in the beginning they wouldn't bother me. It was just like, wow, somebody smoked in the elevator. That is weird, and I can't understand why anyone would do that. But then once I'd been there for 5 years, it was just like, oh my God, this is so annoying. The 100th time that someone's done this.
I'm very different in that regard because my wife will do that too. They're like, I don't want to, I don't like this about Russia, or, I mean, sure, I don't like those things, but I kind of just keep observing how things are done, and I'll just avoid the things that I don't really agree with, or I think that's a lot of expats are they find their niche and where they're comfortable, and they take the good from the country they're living in, and maybe don't even experience the bad in a lot of cases. But I didn't make a conscious decision to become an expat, but I did make a conscious decision to go and experience a different country, and I stayed there for longer than I had expected because I enjoyed it so much. I enjoyed the language and the culture, and just focus on the good things that I can learn from another culture.
Right. So, I mean, those are kind of the reasons that we became expats. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of anyone at least doing it once. I think I've never met anybody who regretted their time as an expat. So let us know in the comments what you'd like to know about our expat journeys, and we'd be happy to share more information.
See you next time.
This was the Expat Edge with Matt and Marcus. We hope you enjoyed the video. Visit theexpatedge.com for even more content that will help you thrive abroad. You can submit your ideas for video topics and sign up for free at theexpatedge.com. See you there.